Good evening, everybody, and thank you very much for attending tonight's inaugural meeting of the EAP Future Communities meeting. Apologies, my camera isn't working this evening, so that's why you won't be able to see me, but I am definitely here. Can we start with apologies for absence, please?
Apologies, Chair, my camera seems to have gone crazy again. Can you hear me?
I can hear you, Ben, but yes, your camera is sending you going backwards and forwards very quickly.
Yeah, we've got apologies from Councillor Wilkes.
Thank you very much. Wendy, you've got your hand raised.
Yeah, Councillor Maxwell's joining. She's joining by Zoom now.
Thank you very much.
So
so we've got item 2, which is the terms of reference. Ben, are you okay to go through that?
I am. Sorry, here we go. So I've got them here now.
Do you want to just wait for Councillor Maxwell to join? We'll give her a minute or two.
Yes. Would you like me to share the terms of reference on screen?
Perfect. Thank you, Ben.
Okay, can you all see those?
Yes, thank you. I don't plan to read all the way through it, or for you to read through it, Ben, because I'm sure we've all read it. Are there any questions or comments that people wish to raise about this?
Shall I just give you sort of the highlights of why the new panels have come into being?
Yeah, that would be great, Ben. Thank you.
Yeah, so there's been a dual process. The leader of the council, Councillor Smithers, wanted to better align the executive advisory panels to the council's corporate plan, which is running from 2021 to 25, because these executive panels were originally created prior to the corporate plan. So the panels were created in May 21 after vesting day, and the corporate plan came a bit later. I think it was in the autumn and winter of 2021. So yeah, we've now got to the point where there's been an additional executive advisory panel that's been created, and they are now more aligned to the priorities contained within the corporate plan. So a number of the panels have had some of their responsibilities changed, but interestingly, our panel, Future Communities, will have very similar terms of reference and scope of activities as the previous panel, which many of you were on, and officers which served for, which was the Education, Employment and Skills panel.
Superb. Thank you very much for that, Ben. Wendy.
So I've got to remind myself where the mute button is. Yeah, I think the terms of reference make sense. I think they're very similar, if not the same as the previous EAP. So I'm very happy with them.
Thank you very much.
Through you, Chair, I think probably the one main change is that you'll be aware that there is a review of scrutiny at the moment, which members are being consulted upon,
Yes.
with a view with a
I've
view
just
to
got tickets for next week, Dorothy.
Okay, bye.
Okay, I'm just going to mute you, Councillor Maxwell.
Thank you. I was just about to say that.
Yeah. So the review of scrutiny, which I think is expected to take in effect once feedback has been taken into account and further consideration has been given by Democracy and Standards Committee after that at the annual meeting in May. So what we would call sort of in the industry as pre-executive scrutiny, which was a role that the executive advisory panels undertook in its previous incarnation. I think it's going to be expected that that role will fall to scrutiny going forward. So those items on the agenda, when you were looking at executive reports, that would move over to scrutiny, and this one is more focused on policy development.
Superb. Thank you, Ben. Are there any other questions or comments around it? Nobody with their hands up? Perfect. Thank you very much for that. So then if we move on to the scope, Ben, please.
Yes, so you'll see here that this is the Executive Advisory Panel for Future Communities, and the suggested area in scope are very similar, if not the same as the areas in scope as our previous panel. I think one thing I would say is that the previous panel probably did very much focus on the top three areas, so education, SEN, and provision for disabled children. And perhaps it might be desirable to also explore these other two areas in terms of young offenders and employment and skills as well going forward as part of future work planning.
Yep, take that on board, Ben. Thank you. I think we did talk at a couple of meetings about the young offenders, because I think we talked about the youth justice report that we have to put through. But absolutely, it does no harm in bringing these things back. So perfect. Dorothy, I've got your hand raised.
I just want to say I'm sorry I'm late, but I didn't realise this meeting was on today.
Okay, thank you for that, Dorothy.
Is there a possibility that you could send me an agenda down the line?
Yeah, you will have received this one, but I'll make sure that you do get them in the future as well.
Well, that'd be good, because to be honest, I've just come out of a police meeting and I wasn't aware of this meeting, so I apologise.
Okay, Dorothy, no problem. Okay, so any questions or comments about the scope? No, I think we're okay. So that's perfect. Thank you very much for that. So then that moves us on to consider policy development items for future consideration. So this is your chance to kind of say what you would like to be put on that. And I know we've always been quite open in the past, and I've always kind of accepted what you'd like. And with Anne-Marie and Susan and Neil, putting together reports about things that you would like to see and you'd like to change, or anything that's coming up. So this is your chance now to let us know what you'd like to go on to the agenda. Wendy.
Are there any policies that are coming up for renewal or that we could look at? So obviously we wouldn't know. I don't know what policies are long in the tooth or are going to be looked at in the near future.
Okay, have you got a copy of the executive forward plan, Ben?
I can't, yeah, because I couldn't find it online, so well, not on my iPad.
I'm just bringing it up.
And I can't.
Thank you, Ben.
Excuse me.
Your camera's doing that thing again as well, Ben.
I think just on that,
Chair, through you, if I might.
Yeah, absolutely.
One of them, obviously, that hasn't come through EAP, Councillor Brackenbury, is the school admissions, which is going to exec, I think, next week. And the reason that didn't come through here is because there's no changes from last year, so it wasn't consulted on. And I think one of the other pieces of documentation that's going to be significant this year is the co-produced SEN, the SEND strategy, which is some time off. But the two things that we can bring through here that will be new will be a co-production charter, which is in the making at the minute, is being co-produced at the minute, if you would. So that's probably something that EAP will want to have a look at, because that'll underpin not just the work on SEND, but certainly the aspiration about how we want to work more broadly across children's services. So I haven't got a timescale for them at this stage, Ben, but we'll let you have them. But in terms of much of our other policy development, I think is I think the services that we've got left in children's services outside of the Children's Trust are very broadly directed in statute. So there's precious little wiggle room in very many of them, but certainly I'm happy that I and my team, aside from the look at the forward plan, that Neil, Susan and I have a look at anything that we think might be coming. But yeah, largely we're bound by statute, and a lot of the policy and procedure is the schools, but we will be looking at some things and reviewing on the back of disaggregation as well. So we'll get them programmed in.
Superb, thank you for that, Anne-Marie. Jean.
Thank you, Chair. I'm playing catch up. As you know, this is my first time at this meeting. So throughout the year, there's going to be other things coming forward, isn't there? So we haven't got to decide exactly this evening what we're going to be discussing on.
No, absolutely. I mean, I've always been kind of open that, you know, that you can always email in if you want a specific area looked at. You can email in, and then as long as you kind of give us time to, or give the officers time to prepare a report, because a lot of it will be statistical based and things to get that information, then we can put it on to the future agendas moving forward. So yeah, no, absolutely. It doesn't have to all be decided tonight. It can come, you know, next week, or if you suddenly jump up in the middle of the night and think, oh, you know what, I'd really like to know something about that, you can let us know.
Yes, I mean, if just to build on that, if, for instance, Anne-Marie was to say, we've got, you know, we're reviewing a policy and it's going to come back in, you know, maybe 9-12 months, then it may be that you feel that you need a briefing on sort of where we are with the current, you know, with the current policy or the area of activity, so that when you when it is time for the policy to be brought back, then you've got the appropriate knowledge base to be able to contribute to that.
Thank you, Ben. Philip.
Thank you. Yeah, a few things that I've found useful in the past, and I think could certainly bear with specific slots in the near future. Homeschooling, we were very well educated about that fairly recently, I think, but I don't know whether that could perhaps go down for somewhere late in the year. I think we should revisit it, as there are still quite a large number of children being homeschooled. It's just, you know, how well are we catering for their needs? I think that would be good to hear more about. Also, this is probably just part of school admissions anyway, but a perennial issue for many parents is children who have educational health plans and are seeking places for them in specific schools because of special needs. How successfully we are doing that as an authority would be good to discuss, maybe as part of school admissions or maybe independently. And finally, and I have mentioned this before when this EAP was in a different guise, look at the SATs results and an analysis of how other children are doing in the Year 6 SATs to be discussed in September, so that we can consider any lessons that we might learn from that.
Perfect. Thank you for that, Philip.
while we're doing that, I can come back on Councillor Irwin's some of that information. So children on education, health and care plans that are waiting for school plays. At the minute in North Northants, there are 30 children that we're working with for securing school places. I've got a slide on that I shared at the request of Councillor Lee from last week's full council. I think the question was raised, so I'm happy, Ben, if I send you the slide that answers those questions, Councillor Irwin, and that can go out with these minutes, Ben, if you like, because that breaks that 30 down about where they are. 18 of them I know were people who've moved into the county during the autumn term. And then I think we just need to be careful that we don't write homeschooling, because homeschooling, of course, is a matter for the schools themselves when they're homeschooling the children. I think what Councillor Irwin is referring to is elective home education. And again, do we make provision for them? We don't have any statutory rights at all to intervene or to get involved in that, but I'm more than happy at some point to have a conversation about elective home education. I think it's probably rolled up, Councillor Irwin, into the item that I know we were going to discuss today, but unfortunately my colleague that was going to bring the item is at a family funeral, so wasn't available this evening. But we can put on the next one, Ben, as previously discussed. Children missing education, we can roll elective home education into that, so we can cover that at the next meeting. And then the final point about analysis of school results, then we can do that once those school results are verified, and we can have a conversation about that. But again, just as a reminder, the majority of our schools are actually academies, and there are only few of our schools now that are in maintained schools that are under our control. But certainly happy to look at the analysis of school results.
Thank you, Anne-Marie. Dorothy.
Is it possible to do a session on looking at excluded children? This is children who've been excluded from school, and what happens to them.
We can certainly look at that. No problem with that at all.
And the other thing is, could we also look at, I don't know that we have or not brought it up, but could we look at the results of year 2? They're not now, but last year's stats in relation to their achievements. Can we look at what effect has COVID had on speech and
I think that's quite a broad area, in that actually that's partly health area as well, Dorothy.
Yes.
But we can certainly look at speech and language provision within North Northants.
Children, how many children who at the present moment in the county or in North Northants Council have requirements for speech and language?
So we can certainly look at that, and we can look at the provisions that are in place. So we can certainly look at that. Yes.
Yeah.
If I can come in, Chair, just to offer some assistance there, we could look at those children with primary needs with SEN that are speech, language and communication needs. But in terms, you're right, Chair, in terms of provision and what's available, that's a health issue. So I think we'd need some notice, because what we would need to do would be bring in colleagues from NHFT to talk about the availability of speech, language and communication support.
Well, I was thinking, I'm sorry, go on.
Yeah, go on, Dorothy, what were you going to ask?
I was thinking in one school that I know, there's a little boy who can't speak at all.
Right. Dorothy, if it's with respect, if it's about a child in a specific school, I'm happy
no, it's not about a child.
Have a conversation separately about it rather than here.
No, what I meant is, what I was thinking was, how many children at the present moment are we assisting in speech and language? Maybe that's the best way to put it.
Yeah, absolutely. So we can prepare a report in, you know, how many there are in Northants that we are working with, and like Anne-Marie has just said, we need to work with our health colleagues to kind of get a report back about what we're doing to help them and support them. So yeah,
Right.
Absolutely.
Thank you,
Dorothy. Jean.
Thank you, Chair. Mine follows on really from Dorothy's. We know that children returning to school after COVID, especially from sort of reception and going into moving up into junior school, have had a bit of a hard time of it. Can we have some reports, perhaps catch-ups throughout the year on the number of exclusions, especially in primary, and also how many children are inverted commas missing from education as a regular update. And I do pick up on Dorothy's I think there's a question about speech and language, because I know it's quite difficult in some schools for children to actually see a speech therapist. They have initial assessment and then it's handed over to the school, and that's not always beneficial to the child's development. So that's two things I'd like to see. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, no problems, Jean. We can put those. Well, we have done those previously, so we can include an updated report. I think there was some figures sent out a few weeks ago about missing children in education and why they're missing. But absolutely, we can update members as and when throughout the year. That's not a problem. Is there anybody else that anything else that comes to mind at the moment? No, so I think Anne-Marie, Susan, and Neil, you've got some reports that you know that want to come forward, and I'll keep you updated as and when members would like other information as well. And I know that you'll come to me as well with other topics that are perhaps coming to executive or something that is paramount, and we can look at those as and when they come forward as well. So. But yeah, if you have a particular item that you want to discuss, just drop me a line, give me a ring, drop me an email, and then we can add it on. So that's superb. So that actually brings us to the end of tonight's meeting. So we're now moving to bi-monthly, aren't we? So the next one is in April. So by that time, we'll have a couple of reports that we can digest, go through, and have a good conversation about. So I look forward to seeing you all in April. So thank you very much for coming along this evening, and take care.
Thank you, Chair.